Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, May 17th, 2013. And I want to change the weekly news wrap-up name this week to Scandaltopia, because that's what it is. We've got new revelations about Benghazi. We've got, the IRS and them targeting hundreds of conservative groups. We have the Department of Justice subpoenaing the files of reporters. And we have yet another military sex scandal. All these stories are important, but they're keeping our eye off the ball and other important stories. Well, let's just run down the list. Benghazi, the White House is releasing some emails, documenting what went on, but not right after, this is a couple of days later. They are documenting and sending out some emails, but listen, the Republicans in the House want lots more emails. They're talking about a select committee. They're talking about more investigations. And, they say, hey, after all, in the Nixon administration, nobody died. And here, 4 Americans died, and it was covered up just before an election. And so this is a problem. And I want to add a little thing that struck me with all this, is that you've heard about all that lax security, they asked for it and all this. But when things went bad, they had no intention of rescuing anyone. And here's why I say that. I looked at all the hearings, all the testimony of the 3 whistleblowers last year, and one of them was a guy by the name of Mark Thompson. And he is part of a group inside the Department of State, and it's called the Foreign Emergency Support Team, FEST. Foreign Emergency Support Team, the acronym FEST. And, this team is comprised of, special operations people, FBI, security officials, people that can strap it on and go in guns a-blazing and secure an embassy. This is inside the State Department, a special team of expert people that can put together a rescue of an embassy. And Mark Thompson, who's a deputy in charge of this FEST team, or what's one of the things he does, he's part of it, he says that FEST, which is, again, the Foreign Emergency Support Team, this is inside the State Department. This is under Hillary Clinton's purview. He says that was taken out of the menu of options. The people that can arrange a rescue was taken out of the menu of options? This was a policy decision. And as I said before, they never intended to rescue anyone when this thing went sour. That FEST was taken out of the menu of options. Now, I know the Accountability Review Board with Pickering and Mullins, the former Joint Chiefs and former diplomat, they said, Hillary Clinton is not to blame. Really? The person in charge that she and only she could have made some of these decisions is not to blame? I'd like to have a job where I'm not to blame. I run a big global department and I'm not to blame for the things that go wrong, especially when people die, and especially when cries for help were denied, ignored, never intended to help these people. Next up, the scandal involving the IRS targeting hundreds of conservative groups. Boy, this makes Richard Nixon look like an amateur. I mean, what this is an attempt to keep the opposition from organizing. End of story. You talk about a heavy hand, overreach of power. This is it. Now, Speaker of the House, John Boehner, says, hey, I want to know who's going to go to jail for this, because I think there are criminal actions involved in this. You're going to see lots unfold with all this. But, the president, says he wants to get to the bottom of it and fix it. He wants to fix it. He said that yesterday in a press conference. It's his job to fix things that go wrong with the government. Really? And so, do you know who was in charge of the tax-exempt portion of the IRS that handles these tax-exempt groups and the groups that were targeted? The person in charge of that department was a woman by the name of Sarah Hall Ingram. You think she's getting fired? No. I can't make this up. She is getting a job promotion, and she's going to be actually getting a big job. She's going to be taking care of the IRS part of Obamacare. That's right. Sarah Hall Ingram, the person in charge, I want to say this again, of the tax-exempt organizations during the period where they were targeting hundreds, maybe 500 or so conservative groups, and that number could grow. She was in charge of that department, and now she's going to be in charge of Obamacare, and I would like to rename it to Obama Control Care, because the IRS is going to control every aspect of your life, from your finances to your physical, medical care. The IRS is going to be taking care of this. Now, you don't think they might overreach their power, like they just did, and start handing out medical records to people and start, using that against people in the other party, either side, Democrat or Republican. You don't think the IRS could do that, right? This is unbelievable. The more we find out about Obamacare, and listen, the left's always going to love it. The right's always going to hate it. The middle, the 40% that's the middle, when they wake up and find out, when this thing fully gets implemented, oh boy, is the middle going to be really, really upset. And, again, this is a situation where the president, he didn't know anything about this. That's what he said. He said he learned about it on news reports. Really? The president of the United States, then you ought to fire somebody underneath you. Then somebody ought to be fired. And again, this is the guy, President Obama, who just last week at Ohio State's graduation said that you should reject the voices of that tyranny is lurking around every corner. You should reject those voices. That's about what he said. Really? You should reject the voices of tyranny? Maybe not. Speaking of tyranny, you've got the scandal involving the Department of Justice and the secret subpoenaing of, hundreds of phone records from Associated Press reporters. Now, there was a real security leak, a real security problem, and it was a Yemeni guy. I'll give you the Cliff Notes. It was a Yemeni guy that wanted to, do another bombing, and, the United States thwarted it. That's actually a positive story for the Obama administration, but they wanted to find out where the leak came from, and they thought it came from the AP, so they subpoenaed the phone records without even asking them. Of course, 50 media groups, including the AP, said, boom, that was overreaching, that was out of line. They wrote a letter to the government saying this is totally out of line, and I'm thinking, boy, that's rich. You mean the Patriot Act didn't wake you up? You mean the indefinite detention clause in the NDAA didn't wake you up where they can hold somebody indefinitely? You mean the targeted drone murder, policy we have where we kill everyone, including a 16-year-old boy who's an American citizen without due process? You mean the trashing of the U.S. Constitution, the Second, the Fourth, the Fifth, the Sixth Amendment, and maybe some other ones? You mean that didn't really get you going, but this subpoena of reporters did? Well, thank goodness. You finally woke up. And again, Eric Holder, another Obama official, the head of the Department of Justice, recuses himself and says he knew nothing about the subpoena. Really? Your underlings did something? You didn't know anything about it? Wow, somebody should be fired there. I just find that hard to believe that Eric Holder didn't know anything about this massive subpoena and document and information grab from the Associated Press. I find that really quite hard to believe. Finally, yet another sex scandal in the military. Women who are claiming sexual abuse. And I believe them. And in this case, the Secretary of Defense, Chuck Hagel, really didn't know anything about it. He's a new guy. And this could come at a worse time for Chuck Hagel. I bet you he is upset with all the stuff he has to worry about. Now he's got to clean up, charges of sexual abuse in the military, which, again, he had nothing to do with. And this under a backdrop of the civil war in Syria that's, claimed more than 70,000 lives of Syrians. It's, where the Israelis are bombing targets around Damascus, where we still have a heated situation with Hamas. We still have a heated situation with Hezbollah in Israel and Iran over their nuclear program. And let's not forget about North Korea. They're on a back burner, but might I remind you, they are nuclear armed. Meanwhile, there's a total disconnect with the mainstream media and the Wall Street economy and the Main Street economy. A 100% total disconnect. Record numbers of people on food stamps. I think it's around 47 million. The real unemployment rate, if you did it the way it was done in 1980, is 23% underemployed, unemployed. And now we have, many, of the economic indicators rolling over, and the Fed's talking about tapering. They're going to taper, right? They're going to quit buying $85 billion worth of mortgage-backed securities and treasury bonds, because what they're really doing is propping up the economy. But, when you have stories like this here in the USA Today last week, they're talking about economists. They see advancing recovery despite Washington gridlock. Right? What economists are they talking to? Of course, that story doesn't bring up the $85 billion a month they're printing up at the Fed to prop up the economy. Here's what: doomsayers, no soothsayers. Record Dow Jones, record S&P. The NASDAQ is still at 30-40% off its high. But doomsayers, not soothsayers. In other words, hey kids, stay in the pool. Water's just warming up. Don't worry about the $85 billion a month. Don't worry about any of that. Don't worry about all the crime on Wall Street that's going unpunished. Stay in the pool. Don't worry about all the talk of bail-ins that's over in Europe. And speaking of Europe, how could all that be going on when here, Eurozone recession, longest ever. The Eurozone recession, longest ever. You know what? This isn't a recession. It's a depression. I mean, you've got unemployment rates over in the Eurozone for youth for, 40, 50, 60%. It's, in some countries over there, it's a depression. They're talking about more bail-ins in Europe. We just had Ira Harris, who's a master trader, also on the board of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, say, Europe could suck under the entire world. That's not fixed. You think it's fixed, you're drinking Kool-Aid. That's unbelievable. We have this disconnect in the economy, and that's the reporting we get. And now all these scandals to take our eye off of, possible war in the Middle East, possible war with North Korea, a imploding economy that's not getting better despite all the money printing, and now we have all these scandals. It's a sad state here in America. I want to thank everybody for supporting USA Watchdog with your comments and your donations. That's the way I see it. I'm Greg Hunter. You have a nice weekend.